Hello, hello, hello. This is the first week of e-learning. This is the general music lesson. This is actually going to be for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade this week. For 5th grade, it's just a slight review. You shouldn't really need the first half of this, but if you do, that's totally okay. And watch the whole thing. 4th grade, you should know this pretty well as well. I just can't get comfortable right now. And 3rd grade, we only briefly talked about this. So we're gonna have a lot of learning to do with the 3rd grade for this, okay? It starts with a lesson for the first half, and then there's a game for the second half, and then I'll talk to you about what you could do to even make the game more fun. But let's get started, okay? This should hopefully look familiar to you. This right here is going to be our staff. Our staff has 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines that go horizontally, okay, from left to right. We always count them from the bottom up. This is important for a couple reasons, but we'll get there in a second. Now on our staff, we also see this strange symbol. This symbol, hopefully you remember, is called a treble clef. It's called a treble clef, and then it also has a nickname, G clef. We drew a bunch of treble clefs a couple months ago, and if you have been following my my videos over break, you know that we also drew some treble clefs not too long ago, a couple days ago. If you need help drawing your treble clefs, go ahead and find that video and practice that way. But it's always important that we circle our treble clef around this second line. Why is that important? Do you remember? It's been a couple weeks since I've seen you. It's been a little while since we've talked about it, but why is that important? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. Line number 2 is where we circle around. Why? What again did I say was the nickname for our treble clef? It's called a treble clef, but it's also called what? A G clef. A G clef, G as in the letter G. And it's important because if we were to put a note right here, there's my second line. I put a note on that second line. What note would that be? I know it's a whole note, but I'm looking for a note name. So note names would be a letter of the alphabet, A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. What is the note name for that note that's on the line that the G clef circles around? You want a hint? There's your hint. G. We call this note G. And that's why that's so important that we circle around the second line, because it helps us remember that that second line is our G. Once you know your G, you can figure out a lot more. Now, I mentioned that our notes are letters. So we have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What happens after G? G is special for another reason. What is that other reason? What happens after you get to G? Do you remember? Let me move this magnet. After we get to the letter G, we repeat it again. A, B, C, and so on. It just keeps going. So that's why G is so important. We call it a G clef. It helps us know where the G is on the staff. And then it's also important because that's the last letter that we have before we repeat and go back to A. So I just gave you a hint. Let's see if you were paying attention. If this is a G on this line right here, I could put a note on this space right there. What would that note be? What note do you think comes right after G? Let's look up here. What letter do we have up here that comes right after G? What letter is that? A. Remember, because after G, we start back over again. So if I have a note right here, it's A. And so the space above my G is A. So what do you think the line above my A would be? We have G on a line, A on a space, and then what note do you think would come right after A? Look up here. What letter comes right after A in the alphabet? B. So this is our B. And if this is our B, take a wild guess. If I were to put a note on the space that's above B, if I were to put a note that's on the space above B, what do you think that note would be? We have A, B. What comes next? C. So this is C. We have a line right here. If I were to put a note on that line right here, what would be the line after C? It would be D. So we have D right here. That's a weird looking D. And if I put a note on the space above D, what would it be? What would it be? E. And what if I put a note on the line above my E? If I put a note on my line above my E, it would be F. All this should make sense, right? Because we have A, B, C, D, E, F. That makes sense. Let's go down here. We have a couple we still need to fill in. If I had a note on the space before G, if I had a note on the space before G, look at our alphabet. Here is G. What letter comes before G? What is that letter? It's an F. So I have F right here. And then if I were to have a note on my line before F, what would that be? What would that be? What note comes before F? Let's look up here. Before F we have E. So that would be our E that we have right here. E, F, G, then we restart. A, B, C, D, E, F. And that is the names of our notes. Now, hopefully you remember all of this. This sounds pretty familiar, hopefully. We have a couple things that we use to remind us, some hints to kind of help us come up with these things a little bit quicker. Let me erase real quick, just a little bit off here off the side. If I were to be playing a game with this, which we're about to do in just a little bit. Here we go. If I were to be playing a game with this, what were some hints that we came up with to help us remember how to come up with these faster? You can always find the G and then kind of figure it out from there. But if we want to be even speedier, what were some things that we could do? Here's my first hint. Let's look at the notes that are on the spaces. Remember, we always go from the bottom up. So we have F, A, C, E. Let's write that out. F, A, C, E. Face. It spells the word face. And to help us remember that, we say face is on the space. We remember face is on the space. It doesn't touch any lines, F, A, C, E. Always start from the bottom up. Now, what if we were to look at our letters that we have here? Again, we're going to go from the bottom up. We have E, G, B, D, F. That's not a word. That's not a word. But we came up with a couple phrases that we could use to remember this. One of them that I like to think is every good boy does fine. Every good boy does fine. E for every, G for good, B for boy, D for does, F for fine. Again, we start from the bottom, top. We also said every good boy deserves fudge. A couple classes, we tried to say every girl and boy does fine. Every girl and boy deserves fudge. I think one of the classes, we were trying to come up with something to do with donuts. My donut's right there. But we never came up with anything. Maybe we'll work on that this time too. But this is our review. This is how we remember what the notes are. If you haven't already, why don't you pause the video and draw out what we just did, okay? I want you to draw out the staff with the treble clef, with the notes on there, and with the letters at the top. This is kind of your cheat sheet in a way, but also this is going to help with the game. So take a couple seconds, pause the video, and do that. Now, hopefully you had enough time. If not, pause the video. That's why I said pause it. Okay, we're gonna go on because we have a game to play. But we have one more thing to quickly review. Hold on a second. The last thing we're going to review is going to be our types of notes. Here we go, our types of notes. This should be super easy. We have done this so much, okay? Hopefully this sounds familiar for you. That note, if I just stopped drawing just like that, what kind of note would that be? Do you remember what it's called? It's the longest one. It holds the most amount of beats. It is the whole note. W-H-O-L-E. The whole note. We also then could draw it, but we add a stick to it. When we add a stick to the whole note, it becomes an entirely new note. What is that new note that it's called? Half note. H-A-L-F. Half note. This should all be familiar to you. If we have a half note, but what if I color it in? So I drew my whole note, but I added the stick like a half note, but then I colored it in. What's it called now? It has a new name. It's called a quarter note. Q-U-A-R-T-E-R. Again, hopefully this sounds very familiar. We've been doing this a lot. And then I have one more note. What is that one more note? I draw the quarter note, right? Except this time I'm then going to add a flag to the top, and we call this an eighth note. E-I-G-H-T-H. If you haven't already, please take a moment and write those notes with their names next to them on that same sheet that you wrote down the treble clef with the notes, okay? Take a couple minutes, pause the video, quickly do it. All right, so it is time for us to play a game. Now, if you are doing this by hand, you should have written out these things, right? There's our notes that we just talked about writing down. Hopefully you also made a treble clef, okay? So the copy that you have like this, give this to the person you're going to be playing this game with. Hopefully a parent or guardian might have a little time because it's their job to challenge you for this, okay? And what you need is you just need a blank version like this. So the blank version doesn't have the names here, okay? We're not telling you the pitches. We're not telling you the types of notes. This is what you have in front of you. This is what the other person has in front of them. They get all the answers, you don't, okay? So let's take this. We're gonna cover it up. This is what you're looking at. We're hiding all the secrets. Okay. This is what we're looking at, and the other person is going to tell you what kind of note and where it needs to go. So, if I'm playing with somebody and they say, all right, Ms. Maney, I need a quarter note on D. I point to a quarter note and I point to D. One hand on the quarter note, one hand on D. If they were to say, okay, Ms. Maney, then I need a whole note on F. I point to my whole note and I point to my F. I could do the space here or the line up here, okay? Now, if this is kind of fun, but you want it to be a little bit more fun, hang tight. I'm gonna have a new video that comes up in a little bit where you do it outside. There's gonna be running involved, a lot more than just this, okay? But start with this. If it's a raining day, this will be easier for you to do too, okay? Miss you a lot. Have fun.